Well, hello everyone. This is Andrew McKee, the Irish Bard, here with Fair Life on Life's a Fair. Whew, and I'm back. I know. I missed last week, unfortunately, because I was just a little wiped out, and no COVID or anything like that. I took the test, all good. But yeah, I I was sort of on the cusp of being a zombie, and I thought, well, let me see, and I figured I'd play it safe just in case. But I felt I took a nap during when I would have done the show, and afterwards I felt a lot better. So all is well. So thanks for those that checked in on me, and I appreciate it. And great seeing all of you. So I am back and feeling good. Woohoo! Always a good feeling. I guess, yes, if you could please share the stream, I would appreciate it because it helps a lot more than you'd think. So if you can, go over and share that stream on your feed and say something cool about it if you can. And that would be great. So, yes, it for now, Fair is. I'm taking a little break from Fair. I'm going to be just visiting Scarby, this Scarborough Fair, this coming up weekend, just to check it out and kind of get an idea for next year, because I think I'm going to be performing there next year. At least I'm going to try, so we'll see. And but I haven't been there in a while, so fairs change. I know a lot of you do know that and realize it, but when you haven't been there for several years, stages change, traffic changes. I mean, flows of people, and yeah, I mean, if I had been at Sherwood a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and then I came this year, oh my God, would it have been different? The crowds were enormous comparatively, and it's good to check it out. Definitely good to check it out. So yes, and hello everybody. Hello Kathy and Drew and Katsrita and Janine and Jan and Damaris and Gwendolyn. Yes, and yes, totally. That is very true. Just scout and enjoy and see what I can come up with. That is always the goal. So yes, a lot of fairs going on right now. Uh, I've warned you all that, come May, it was going to be crazy around the map, and it is. I'll show you that a little later. But definitely interesting. Definitely interesting. But the fair, you know, I had a weird sort of thought a week ago. Um, I was getting over Sherwood Forest Fair. It's kind of winding down, relaxing a little bit, going over all the things I learned from that year and things I want to do for next year. And believe me, I have a lot of ideas. But one of the things that occurred to me was why I started getting into fair. And, when I first started going to fair when I was young, uh, I first went to the Texas Renaissance Festival, a very large fair, even back then. And I went ahead and went through my archives because I keep archives. I know I'm that guy, and I came across this, and I know that Drew is probably looking at it going, "Oh my God!" But yes, this to put it in perspective, this is the um, 20th anniversary program of Texas Renaissance Festival. So that means it's from 1994. Right. Right. We're coming up on this is the 20th year program. We're getting close to the 50th year of TRF. So yes. It's pretty crazy. I just took a look in that and remembered why I really started yes, it is. Started going in the first place and really loved Fair initially. And of course, this had some interesting things in there, and including, of course, the entertainment schedule. Yeah, right. So I mean, I'm looking at it and seeing all these groups that I used to see back in the day, such as Cantiga and Distampeda, who are still there now, still performing. But groups like Wind and Wire and I Madrigali and Passing Measures, and groups like Glass Knots. The guy who played the glasses with his finger, and it was beautiful stuff. Um, and all these different groups that Therese Honey on the harp, doing that. Yes, just amazing stuff. And sure, I'd see some of the funny stuff, like I would go see Dead Bob, like you always did every year, and I'd see the Flaming Idiots and the fun comedy groups, sure. But for me, it was mostly music. I know, shocker, right? There are some other groups, but that's generally it was about music. I'd see as much music as I could and listen to as much music as I could. Then I'd go to the music shops, and some of them, believe it or not, sold sheet music back then, medieval and Renaissance sheet music. Oh, I was in heaven. I got bunches of those, um, and yes, it was just wonderful. So I'd go to Eric the Flute Maker every year and buy a new bamboo flute because that's what you do, and I really enjoyed it. That traditional music. And I realized that's not fairs anymore. It kind of bothered me how much it has really changed musically. That fairs, I mean, they still have some of these groups here now, uh, but they also include some that, I mean, to be blunt, they're rock musicians. They play rock music. I mean, some of them will have drum kits, with the hi-hat and the cymbals and all that kind of thing playing. And uh, it was, yes, yes, from from YouTube, yes, Dead Bob. I know. Yeah, yeah, I know. Uh, but hey, I'm just saying that you have a drum kit, you have electric bass guitars. Some of them have synthesizers on stage. I mean, musically, there was the old joke that musicians would say, and we would talk about how what's the best instrument to play with bagpipes? The drum. That's your only choice because nothing else can be heard when you play with bagpipes. How they get away with it now is you get these instruments that if you played that unplugged, it's impossible. So the only choice to do it is to play it in this fictional universe where everything is plugged in, but calling it medieval. And I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that because when you try to put modern music and make it seem medieval to push that, you get the Lady Hawk soundtrack. I'm just saying. So I don't know. I've been thinking about this, trying to figure out what to say, and uh, yeah, it's bothered me. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. How do y'all feel about that? I'm kind of curious. And while y'all shoot in, I'm just going to talk about. I am I'm going to build. Well, I've built a new computer for streaming and working and everything, and it's. That's fair if you like the Lady Hawk soundtrack, Susan. But I still don't. I think it hurt the movie more than it helped. Honestly, the music is good on its own, but I don't think it was good for the movie. Honestly. Um, oh yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It it's yeah. The new computer is a monster. Actually, let me just get over here. I can show you this real quick. Here you go. My new computer. Um, and it's a 16 core AMD processor beast. I mean, a 5950X for those keeping score who care, with yeah 64 gigs of memory, ridiculous. So really nice, and I this is probably the last show I'm going to do on my old computer. The next week it'll be on this. I'll be able to add a bunch of new effects and do some cool stuff. So um, it really is going to open up some possibilities. Gradually over the next few months, I'll probably be adding some of those in. Like for instance, one thing I'm thinking of is doing an instant replay where I can just go back and do something I just did or said, or I have a guest who said something and I want to repeat it. I could do some things like that, and this computer could handle it. Also, it should be a lot more stable, which is very good, meaning anything I do won't bog down the computer, won't cause problems. Yeah, it was time, and I think it's really going to make every stream and everything we do in the future a lot better. And it also is a great video editing computer. So I'll be able to do a lot more of that quickly and efficiently. So that is really good. That is really good. So yes, let's see. What are you all saying about this now that I gave you all some time? Um, yes, yes, I get that. Hard to, a lot of amplified instruments make it hard to hear the vocals. Actually, that's the whole problem with rock music, and you can blame that influence and sound engineers who, that's how they trained with rock music. Rock music, it's a style of music where every instrument and voice is the same level. There's no depth to it as far as loudness and loud and soft. It's everything gets the same volume level, even if they have to cut frequencies out of instruments to let another one come in. That's how the engineering works. And everything is just as loud. The bass guitar is just as loud as the vocals, which are just as loud as the drum. And that's a concept which really got crazy in the 80s. And the whole compression wars reinforced that on CDs, which, if you're not familiar with that, that's where they overcompressed all the music to try to keep getting louder and louder, to be louder than the other people. Make everything the same volume so you can push the level of loudness with what's possible. And I think it hurt music a lot. A lot of musicians and purists really believe the same thing. But yeah. Oh, I was talking about computers, and I just sounded like, well, I just said, for those of you who care. For the rest, I'll just sound like peanuts when I'm talking about computers. Um, okay, okay. And that's kind of the thing. Um, okay, and Kathy, you kind of agree with the traditional instruments with less modern, I mean, traditional music with less modern instruments. Yeah, that's kind of with me. Um, and you're right, there are a lot of semi-traditional groups. And okay, here's my view of Faire. It kind of started with very ultra traditional, recreational groups who recreate that whole that traditional. This is how it sounded back then with these instruments type of groups. But then there's the more. It also had folk music, which was sort of the modern version of that style of music. It was, uh, you know, that type of oral tradition type of thing in its modern form, and but still very unplugged and acoustic. And that was about as far as it went. I mean, the most extreme group in 1994 was probably the Flying Fish Sailors at the Texas Renaissance Festival, to put it in perspective. I mean, those were the most out there group. And when I started music and performing at Faire in 1999 with the Brobdingnagian Bards, they thought we were very radical because one of the songs that we did was the Jedi drinking song. Mark wanted to do it all the time because it was popular. I held him back as much as I could because I was kind of like, it's a drinking song, so it kind of works, but it's a stretch. So let's go minimalist, just maybe once a day kind of thing. And we kind of did that for a while because I just thought it should be the exception, not the rule. And that's kind of how I've always looked at it. Okay, okay, and a few instrumental buskers these days. And that, I think maybe that's kind of what we're looking at, that music is kind of, that style of music has turned to busking. And if you're going on a stage, they want it blasting music. And that's kind of bothered me a lot. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, amplified is definitely louder. I mean, yeah. Um, And you're right. Yeah, I mean, people tend to go overboard, and that's the problem. And that's one of the problems with the genre of rock music that I'm talking about. It's designed, part of the style is to be overly loud, not to just be able to so that you can hear it, but to blast it. That's the style of the music. So in order to do it, that's how you have to do it, or it doesn't even sound right for the genre. And in sound engineers who work with it, if they get sound engineers at a fair, that's usually where they come from. I know when I did a South by Southwest gig with my old group, um, it was a big problem because we played at a pub on 6th Street in Austin BD Riley's for that year we did it, and the sound engineer was a rock guy. So he just blasted us because it was a lot of people in the pub, and he just figured, well, you got to get over the people's sound and their noise, and they're being too loud, and so we just sounded horrible. So the review in the Austin Chronicle the next day was all, hey, I really liked them. They were great. The sound guy, it was horrible. The sound was horrible, but the content was awesome, and I really enjoyed it. So we got a good review, but the sound actually, how it was done, hurt us, and it's always a big problem. Uh, oh, you're right. That is true. Amplification drowns the acoustic instruments. I mean, the biggest problem is it kills dynamics. You can't really get very loud or very soft anymore because of mic placement. So it's kind of tough. Um, and I think that's kind of the way I've looked at it too, because guitars technically are not traditional instruments if you're going back to the Renaissance or medieval times. Um, they kind of are a descendant of the lute, kind of. So you kind of get away with it a little, but it's a bit of a stretch. And that alone, I think, has been considered a bit of a stretch, but an understandable one because of how ubiquitous guitars are around the music world. So that's kind of how they get away with it. But yeah, I think doing unamplified instruments that can be acoustic. And there's been a trend to use just amplified instruments, like fiddle players that just use fiddles that you can't hear unless it's plugged in. And I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, you're changing the whole feel of the instrument in a way. The only way you get sound out of it is if it sounds like it's right in your face, like you're this far away from the instrument. That's how it sounds. It's pretty bad. Um, that's a good question. You're not wrong. That's a very good question. Uh, yeah. I mean, here, just to put it in perspective, um, well, here, let's talk a little bit about it. Let me move over to some other stuff. Like you can have venues where you don't need amplification. And here, let's like look at this. Look how many people are in the audience. And traditionally, you could do that and sing or do whatever, and everybody in the room could hear you. Now, of course, this is indoors. Outdoors is a little different, but it is possible. It is very possible. Now, ideally, what you want is you want the sound to be well, here, like that person in the front row center. You want it to be like the sound that they hear is close to the sound everybody hears. That's the goal, especially in the design of the stage and the building a room, or even outdoors, the design of that's what you're going for. You're trying to maximize that level of volume and sound and clarity to everyone. That's the goal. So, oh, really? Well, take it from somebody who's done it on the stage like that. It's interesting. It's a little overwhelming at first. Really, you just have to have faith that the people in the back can hear you, and you just do what you do, and that's kind of it. But it's a trip. I've been on a few of those over the years. It is interesting, from big concert halls, playing with the chieftains on stage. That was an experience. To big auditoriums. Even played in a stadium before. It's bizarre. So, yeah, the tough part in the stadium, of course, is you can't watch them clapping. You have to ignore them because they're so far away. They're actually offbeat, and it'll mess you up. But anyway, sound is, well, okay. That distance between the first audience member and the musician is something along the lines like this. That's about the perfect distance to hear. But the way microphones work, where they're right on your lapel or right next to your mouth, or plugged in directly into your guitar, means that the sound coming out of the speakers is like this. That's how close you are. You're hearing it that close, and it distorts, it ruins the whole concept of stereo, where your ears hear different sounds from each side of the instrument. It really messes with it. Um, so yeah, it is a challenge. It is a challenge. Oh, okay. Yeah, the soprano recorders, one of the problems with the soprano recorder is the lower register, the first octave is, well, here, I mean, the low octave is a lot softer than the high octave. And volume wise, it's a quirk with a soprano recorder. So when you go, the higher octave is louder. I mean, also higher pitch stuff sounds louder to people anyway. So it's a lose-lose in that. So it's tough, and we've got to try to find the trick for busking for me on those, Drew, is to find a tune that tends to go in the higher register most of the time, and play that. Huh. Oh, it muted me? Oh, that's funny. Oh well. Um, let's try that again. It muted me? That shouldn't have happened. Should should work. Yeah, I mean, I can tell a difference of about 20 decibels, according to what I'm seeing here on my end, between the high and the low. So, very different. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, that sound, I don't like that sound where you're just that close to somebody. It just sounds overblown and wrong, and you lose dynamics where you cannot be, if you want to go really loud and then really soft to try to get that emotion in a song, it doesn't work when you're that close to the performer, because everything sounds pretty loud. It's so overblown, it doesn't work. Um, Also, you're kind of relying on the sound engineer to do that balance for you. So if you have multiple musicians, you have no concept of how, if you should play louder because the person next to you is playing louder, or if you should play softer. What you try to do is you just play what you've practiced and try to just go with it on instinct, and believe that the sound engineer has your back and will try to balance everything how it should be. The problem is, at fairs, the sound engineers were never at your practice. They're just doing it based on what their taste is. So and like I said, a lot of them, they're more rock music based and trained. So they put everything at the same volume. The lyrics tend to not stand out as much um, in the mix, and it's a huge problem. Uh, oh, right, right, right. Uh, yes, that's a specific problem. You know, one thing I've always thought would be interesting, um, would be to set up it wouldn't be difficult to set up at a stage where, if you are amplifying, to have the amplification set up like a Bluetooth connection so that people can connect their phones to it, and um, just hear it through an earpiece, and just put their earbuds in and hear it clearly. A lot of hearing aids and everything can connect to their phone as well, so you could connect to it. I've wondered why they don't do that, because it wouldn't be hard to set up. It really wouldn't these days, and how common Bluetooth devices and transmitters are. Yeah, I would think having multiple connections to it and setting something up, very doable. So yeah, just a theory, but yeah. Now, uh, yeah, let's see. The other thing is, historically, they knew how to do it acoustically. I mean, when you go with the ancient Greeks and the Romans, I mean, they could do an auditorium, an outside venue, and make it quite clearly work, where people could hear you even from the back. Now, certainly people projected well, and you had to be good at that, and some people aren't. Very true. But it was very doable. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, you look at how to do a stage, and the trick is having as many reflections where all the sound that comes out of you bounces back to the audience. Um, so that's the thing. The roof is slanted and angled where every sound that goes up at different places comes back down and hits everybody in the audience. Usually the side walls too does the same thing, and you have a back to your stage, which any sound that hits the back comes right back out and hits the audience at that angle. And it's also good to have a lip, an angled lip above you, um, on any stage, so that any sound that goes straight up automatically reflects off and goes down to the audience. You just have to hit that right angle based on um, where the audience is seated, and that's it. I mean, now I know at a fair this is an indoor thing. You can't really do that very well. I get that. I'm not that naive, but oh yeah, Damaris is right. Yeah. Oh, hello, friends. Oh, hey, Harvey, and Damaris, learning how to project is an important part of being a performer. Very true. Really true. But yeah, I mean, my thinking is, uh, you know how they have sunshades over stages? Set those, have a good lip over you that reflects well, and then past that, set up sunshades that actually reflect audio. I mean, come on. It wouldn't have to be. The problem with a lot of sunshades is the canvas. It either absorbs the sound, or sound just passes through, so there's no reflection at all. Get something that works, and reflects it. Even a bit would make a huge difference. Get the angles right. It's just a little bit of math. It's not that scary. And yeah, just make it work. You can, the sides, I know that's not practical at fairs. Usually the sides are open, but make sure the back of the stage, a lot of stages nowadays have backs, but a lot of them are not that good at reflections. They're either covered with canvas, tarps that, you know, absorb the sound anyway, or they have weird angles or depths to them that don't do a great job. I mean, you need to make sure it reflects to the audience, and that's the goal. And oh, yeah, from YouTube, Andrew says that saw amphitheater at Pompeii, and it's amazing. Um, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, they knew how to do it back then, so this is not something you actually have to have a calculator for. That's my point. You can do it. It's just nobody tries. Nobody tries, and it's a huge thing. Um, and yeah, it's pretty much like light. Yes, it pretty much the same. But yes, that's kind of the gist. And I it's tough because I know that, um, the whole rock band thing. I get that. I mean, there are groups out there that advertise themselves, I kid you not, as Celtic rock, and they do it at fair. That's how they promote themselves. I don't understand. I mean, I really think that what's going to happen is in the next 10 to 20 years, there's going to be sort of a backlash where some fairs are going to start being more traditional and going for that whole, we're actual Renaissance and medieval events, as opposed to, these other fairs trying to be medieval times, and just have a joust with dinner. And I think that's going to kind of move the pendulum back. I think that's how it's going to work. That's my theory anyway. I don't know what y'all think. I'd love to hear y'all's opinions on this more. If that's funny. I mean, yes, musicians that still do it. I mean, one thing that performers now can do, if they do approach things that way, is that's how they can differentiate themselves from all the other groups and advertise themselves as, hey, I'm actually Renaissance and medieval, as opposed to, these modern groups. If you want to go to a rock concert, well, there you go. That's probably not your audience anyway. But yeah, that's kind of where I am with it. But I do realize that there are some fairs that I wouldn't go to now. I just wouldn't visit. It's kind of weird. It's a weird realization based on, what I used to love when I would go to fairs as a kid. That now some of them, I mean, they're they're rock concerts that are themed Renaissance. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. The use of technology is pretty crazy. I think if you're going amplification, you can do it where you go for a different proximity, because the proximity effect, where the mic is so close to your mouth and your instrument that it just sounds so overblown to begin with, it loses that feeling of live. It's hard to explain. I guess let's put it this way. I can either sound like this, or I'll go up to the top of the mic. I can sound like this. And this is the difference. I hope you can hear it, where I'm right next to the mic, or down here where I'm just a good ways away from the mic, about a couple of feet. So could you hear a difference on that? And yeah, and that's one of the things I've also noticed, that some performers, they'll go the amplification way because they can get bigger stages, they can get bigger audiences, and I get that. At the same time, I also hear that what they're doing is they're using it to hawk for them, to announce to people who are far enough away that something's going on over here, and thereby interfering with shops, with other stages, with lane bits, buskers, whatever. And there are groups you can hear halfway across the fair, if not across the entire fair, during a day, because they just blast it that long. And I can't get on board with that, because it's not only, I don't care if it is the style of music you're playing, it's disrespectful is really how I'd view it. And yeah, and they try to cheapen it, and that's kind of the way. I mean, even using traditional instruments, sometimes they'll really overblow, and I think that's a problem. So my idea is to use mics that are a little bit away from you as much as possible. And you could set up stages to do that. If you set up a stage where you had ambient mics take at different places around the front of you, either at the top facing down, from from that lip that I told you, that going up, and kind of facing down to catch what you say or play, and then playing that out in such a way so that it's just sound reinforcement. It's not designed for amplification. It's designed to do the same thing that these different aspects to the different stages do, just to recreate them with speakers, to try to get that whole, to recreate it essentially digitally. So yeah, I think that could work. But and yeah, you're also right. Volume arms race. You're right, Drew. That's what happens. Yeah, amplified by Plonk. But no, it's just yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do this, and it's a challenge. And you're right. And you're not wrong. I mean, I still think there's a middle ground that we could all get behind, where it's not completely for people. I mean, like I said, there are people who have instruments that are cool, but they're quiet, or voices that are beautiful, but they're just not that good at projecting, even though they've trained and tried to do it. Some people, it's just out of their wheelhouse, and it's a shame. So trying to make up for that, I get, but there's a limit. And I think the other problem is that fairs tend to not enforce that limit. I've seen a few fairs do it, to be fair. I have seen some fairs actually do a pretty good job with the amplification, but others, no. And yeah, I totally agree with you, Janine. The amplification should sound natural. And the problem is those mics that are right next to your mouth, like you could hear when I did that with the micro, it sounds very different. It doesn't sound like a live show, because it sounds like you're that far from their face. And that's a problem. Oh gosh, and it's already 7:36. Wow. Okay, yeah, this was a big topic, so I tried to cover it, but yeah, we're already way over. Let's jump over to the fair map real quick. Let's do this. Yeah, we can. Think about it. If you have any other comments on this, yeah, please feel free to jump in with them. Um, and we'll talk about it a little at the end. But let's just get through the map real quick. Now, the map is a lot more fairs now. I told you a lot more going on, and let's just jump through real quick and do it now. Of course, in Texas we have the Scarborough Renaissance Festival, and let's see. Then we have the Janesville Renaissance Fair in Janesville, Wisconsin, up there, up north and central. That's pretty cool. And the Oklahoma Renaissance Festival in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So that's going on now. Always a fun one. Let's see. Out west, we have the original Renaissance Pleasure Fair in Irwindale, California. And we also have the Utah Renaissance Festival and Fantasy Fair in Marriott, Slaterville, Utah. Now, that's not to be confused with the Utah Renaissance Fair. It's the Utah Renaissance Festival and Fantasy Fair. You know, I need to have a good show about fair rivalries because which I'm not sure which fair came first, but whichever one decided they were going to use a name that was that similar, I don't think they liked the other fair, because that's not a good call for promotion or marketing or branding. And yeah, I think, yeah, we need to do an episode on fair rivalries, because like football teams, they get pretty serious sometimes. It's a little scary. Yes. Okay. Then over in Northwest in Washington, Two Rivers Medieval Fair in Kashmir, Washington. Now that's also not to be confused with the Two Rivers Fair in Arizona, in southwest Arizona. So slightly similar name, but different part of the country, so we'll forgive it. Then let's see. We have the over in New York, the Kingdom Fair in Yorktown Heights, New York, and the Mayfair on the Green in Holland Patent, New York. I think, did I mention? No, I didn't mention the Renaissance Festival of Nebraska and Papillion, Nebraska, not Papillon. Well, they're not that French. Papillion, Nebraska, and then of course the Georgia Renaissance Festival in Fairburn, Georgia, is Fairburn, Georgia, just south of Atlanta, is going on, and the Virginia Renaissance Fair in Spotsylvania, Virginia, is still going on, so that's nice. In North Carolina, the Eastern North Carolina Renaissance Fair in Kinston, North Carolina, and the Tennessee Renaissance Festival in Arrington, Tennessee. We go up into the Northeast, going on with the New Hampshire Renaissance Fair in Fremont, New Hampshire. And I went ahead, you can kind of see the star up there just under my name, McKee. I went ahead and included the Montreal Medieval Fair in Montreal, Quebec. I kind of figured, you know, if they can put baseball teams in Canada, we can go ahead and include that. It's just across, so if people in the U.S. can go up there, yeah, there's no longer a baseball team in Montreal, only in Toronto. But oh well. I know. Susan's going, what? Right. The Montreal Medieval Fair. Yeah. So I'm trying to include it if I can, if I come across that. It's this weekend. Well, Friday through Sunday, actually. So Friday through Sunday. So I'm glad you're online to see this. So yes. Montreal Medieval Fair. And for those of you in America who actually had no clue, and I'm betting there were probably more than care to admit, that's where Montreal is. Because yeah, they don't always teach us that. And what's closest to Dallas? That would be the Scarborough Fair. Scarborough Renaissance Festival is what Jeremy's asking. Yes. So yes, that's what we have there. Now, there were plenty of others. There were some Viking festivals, several pirate festivals, and a couple of fairy festivals going on this weekend. But yeah, there's so much I didn't include it. I've thought about it. What I'm kind of thinking is throwing in having different icons, like keep the stars for the Ren Fair, but maybe put different markings, like maybe a round Viking shield for Viking festivals. I'm not going to do the two horns thing because that is so not historically accurate and cheesy. So I'm not doing that for that icon. But maybe just a round shield or something for the Viking festivals. Maybe a pirate flag for pirate festivals, that icon, and I don't know, maybe fairy wings for a fairy festival, and approaching it like that. What do you think? Is that something um, y'all really care about? And um, oh, Jared's asking how far. It's about um, it's about 20 minutes south of Dallas, depending on where in Dallas you are. Uh, that's what the Scarborough Fair is. So yes, I don't know. Do y'all would y'all be interested in getting that information? That would be cool. Okay, okay, that's just to kind of differentiate it, because I don't want to not include them, but and I didn't this weekend. There's a Viking festival in Virginia, a pirate festival in California, Florida, New York, and New Jersey. Although the New Jersey's one's a ferry and pirate festival, they go both, so that's gonna be a tough icon. Uh, then uh, then there's a ferry festival in Utah, and um, sort of a fantasy festival in Indiana. I'll have to think about that. Maybe Dragon? I don't know. We'll see. We'll come up with it. Mm. Okay. And all the festivals. Yeah. Woohoo! Okay. Okay. And going back to the comments earlier, because when now we're back to the overall. Um, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the whole choir mics. You just kind of use ambient mics that are designed to get a whole range of sound. It's more like the mic is about the distance you would be if you were that person in the front row, and then they kind of project it out. It doesn't just record the voice of the instrument, it records the group, and then send in the balance of the group, the overall sound, and then sends it out. It's a lot more natural, and you don't have to worry about a sound engineer trying to balance all the different instruments and voices. You just have to make sure that the mics are balanced with each other, and that's it. So it works a lot better. I think it really would help. Now the problem is if you're on stages that get a lot of ambient noise because of their design or location or whatever, um, those mics are going to pick that up too, and it's going to be a problem going forward. So you really have to be careful with that. But so it can't just be a mic setup. You also need to do some work on the stage to try to minimize that ambient noise thing. So yeah, and I think you can kind of do both. You could set it up where the stage is better for unplugged work, and it has an ambient mic setup, and those two together would be great, and it would sound fairly natural. I think it could be done quite effectively. Uh, right, right. I remember always saying so. Oh yeah, I went up to Tuxedo, and people would say, "Which one?" I do, yeah. And I don't know about a 4-hour TED talk, but we'll see. We'll see. Um, and you're right. It's not easy to come up with names for fairs, but I mean, you could. What's the common practice when you have fairs that are in the same state and one already snags the whole state name Renaissance Fair? Is to go with the North state name Renaissance Fair, or like Scarby did, to come up with your own just creative name, Scarborough Fair. Although technically there's Scarborough Renaissance Fair. They try to stay away from the song title. But yeah, yeah, it is. Oh, butterflies. Yeah, maybe for the icon. We'll see. We shall see. Ah. Right? Yeah, that whole that's the Fairy and Pirate Festival in Bud Lake, New Jersey. So maybe they are doing a Peter Pan vibe. That'd be interesting. I think that could actually be pretty cool. Pretty cool. Uh, and you're right. You're right. But some fairs I think is very kind. I think when it comes to stages, almost all fairs are poorly designed when it comes to acoustics. It's very rare you get a good acoustic stage. Um, in fact, I'm trying to think of them at all the fairs I've been at. I can, I can think of good acoustic stages on one hand at every fair I've ever been at. I haven't been to all the fairs, but I've been to many, and it's just they're not designed for it. They're designed at best for the look and the seating and that. Um, so we'll see. And I, you'd think that, but that's not exactly true. These days, I mean, yeah, 20, 30 years ago, it was a lot more difficult. But nowadays, the the materials are not as rare and expensive as they used to be. So, and you don't have to do the absolute best. I'm not talking about using the same materials they use in an opera hall. I mean, you're just asking. I mean, that can be expensive. Go is something that works very well, and but is not is cheap. And and you're right. And really, I think the main thing, Drew, in my opinion, is sound is an afterthought. If they went in saying we're building a new stage, how can we make it sound good at this location? Um, but I haven't seen evidence they've done that because so many stages are like a palette or something like, I mean, they start off with something really generic, and that's fine if you're doing that for the first year, but really have a plan with how to do it right. Um, I think it would work well. But you know, I I know enough to do a stage with a lot of help if I had to. And I certainly know enough to test and make sure do it the best I can. But honestly, I should get with an acoustic engineer if I was to do that. I'd have to really work with somebody and do a good job and really work on that. Which maybe I should. Maybe it would be a good thing to approach it that way. Yeah, it might. It might, Janine. Uh, Maybe that should be a project I look at because it's just to come up with an inexpensive basic stage or group of stages for different looks and different events that are great acoustically. Um, that might be a great idea. Uh, I don't know. I'll reach out to some people and see what I can find out. But anyway, that's my rant for the night. Thanks for entertaining me and joining me on that. It's just something I noticed, and it bothered me that some fairs I really wouldn't go to these days. Other fairs still, yes, but um, it's hard to find them that have that same traditional magic of that feels like well, I guess probably like a pre-Raphaelite painting. Um, I mean, it's not an exact recreation. It's idealized, and they have some modern touches that like fleshy toilets sometimes, which are nice. But I still wish they would. I still wish they would do a better job sometimes with the traditional stuff, and not feel like if I do concentrate on traditional music, I feel like more of a pariah. Because when you have modern music and traditional music at the same venue, the modern music is more recognizable to people, so they'll tend to go to it. So it's kind of an unfair competition that they've created in a way, and that does bother me because it, like the whole music war that was mentioned earlier, the volume war. It's There's a tendency to go that other way just to keep an edge and keep a fan base and keep going. Mm. Hmm. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out. I've already gone way over my time. This is, gosh, this might be the longest Fairlife I've ever done. I think the longest before was like 47, 49 minutes, and yeah, we're over 50. So sorry about that, everyone. Thanks for hanging out and enjoying, and I hope I caused you to think a little bit, and I hope there are some fairs nearby that you can check out and see what you think. Listen to listen to the audio and see if you agree with me or if you think that, nah, this works fine. I have no problem with this. Perfectly acceptable to think that. This is always my opinion. So, well, yes, you can tell I did some research at least, right, Janine? This was just a weird, interesting topic that occurred to me that I thought was important to mention and bring up. So take care, everyone. Have a great time, and don't worry. I should have a new computer by next week, so I'll try to show it off a little bit and enjoy it for next week. So I'll see you then. Take care, and as always, have a fair life.